Welcome to Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative's Autism Hour with Miss Kimberly Howard from the Kentucky Autism Training Center.
I am Kim Howard, and I work for Kentucky Autism Training Center. KVEC has been awesome, a great partner in giving this opportunity to share brief snippets of information with you over the course of this school year. I see classrooms across the state. In my previous role, I was a dual certified special education teacher. So I have spent quite a few years in the classroom at a lot of different grade levels over the course of years. So, all right, today has been a wild day for me. So I put this in here because I was like, I need to process out where I'm at today. So the way that this works is on a scale of guinea pigs. How are you feeling today? Normally, I ask people to just put the number in the chat. So it's numbered 1 through 9. Which guinea pig is you? Ooh, we have an 8. Flamin', nice hair. It's all going good today. We have a few 8s. Awesome. Some 7s. Looking cute. Feeling the world. Some 7s. I'm going to be a 9 after this is done. 6. Happy, smiling. That's awesome. Yay. Yay for some 6s and some 7s out there. A 9. Yeah, I'm feeling a 9 today. This morning I was a 1. Got my sunglasses on. I'm ready to meet the world and looking good. By this afternoon, I am a 9. I just want to wrap myself up in a blankie and kind of hide from the world a bit. Thank you guys for participating in my guinea pig fun. These are fun to do with kids sometimes. It's a quick check-in because you can decide what that picture represents for you, right? In this context, if I don't really need to know exactly how you feel, but fun way to check in, give me a general idea of where we're at today. Okay. So we are going to talk about inclusion-based practices. So these are strategies to help us include our students and children with autism into the regular education classroom. And now we know this is going to vary, right? Just like on our screen, EOD, end of day checklist. It's written word, right? It's just a checklist. You need to review your planner, homework books in the backpack, your planner is in your backpack, and your backpack is zipped, right? So written words, obviously the person that we've made this for is a really good reader, which is great. On the other side of the screen, when should you ask for a break? Maybe you need to ask for a break if you're feeling overwhelmed. Maybe you're having a hard time today paying attention. My body can't stop moving. I'm starting to feel angry. Those are all picture-based, right? They have words, but they also have pictures. So we know that our learner in that circumstances have different needs from each other, which is pretty much the name of the game here, right? We're doing our best to try to meet the needs of a large variety of students. And this is true for all students, but especially true for our students with autism and autism-like disabilities, in that the way that they interact with the world and the way that they need to get their needs met may vary from day to day and may look very different from their same age peers, or may just need some tweaks and may need to be more specific information. And I'll go back to that slide for a minute. That end of day checklist, is anybody a checklist writer for your own self? I am a checklist writer. I love to put things on a checklist of my list of things to do today. And I'm the kind of person that I will not do those things always, but I will go back, I will be doing other things. And I need to add those to the list so that I can mark them out, because it is so, to me, it's really satisfying to mark out the checklist. Yeah, Caitlin, you do checklists, right? So it's a strategy, right? Checklists it's a strategy to support executive functioning skills. And I will tell you from my own personal self, the more stressed out I get, the busier that I get, maybe the older that I get, I need a checklist. Yeah, things have to be on the list in order to do them. I have to add stuff. I'm like, and it makes me feel so happy at the end of the day to see that checklist of things marked out. I don't know why. but it does make me feel quite happy and satisfied with myself. So we're going to talk about ways that we can manage the environment and our classroom environment specifically. So one of the things that we talked a little bit about last time, and I want to make sure we reiterate because we were a pretty small group last time in December, classroom routines are critical. We spend about 50% of our school day in classroom routines. So what's a routine? A classroom routine is, how do you sharpen your pencil in your classroom? Maybe you are in a science lab. How do you put away your lab equipment? Or what's the routine for participating in a science experiment? How do we enter and exit the classroom? Line up, arrival. Think for a second, what's a common routine in your setting? Just think for a minute about what does that look like for you. And these vary from school to school. And these vary obviously as students are younger or older. These are going to change a lot. Turning in your homework independently becomes a much more critical skill as students age and get a little older, right? So thinking about what does this mean for the classroom? Routines have to be formally taught. So how do we ask for help? And it gives a lot more examples of different routines. Going through the lunch line is a huge routine. Everybody does it pretty much the same way. And it's one of those things that if we spend some time teaching these routines formally, or giving students visual supports to support remembering what the routines are, then it's going to decrease anxiety. It's going to get you more attention. The child's able to focus attention on hopefully whatever academic skill you're teaching, and that in turn will give you more student work output, right? More student work output will happen. So you can see the picture on the screen is, please pick up your graded work. And so this is obviously a school. I'm going to assume it's a middle school or high school. They have different periods. Each period has their own basket. The students have a sign that say, here's where I need to go. Here's where I get this at. What am I handing in today? It says letters. So I'm assuming there's a specific place that they are handing in those letters. So teaching those routines are a critical skill that will save you so much time and effort. If you think about 50% of your class day is spent in those everyday routines. So now think about your students. What students are you currently supporting that do not have good, aren't able to participate in those everyday routines on a consistent basis easily? Those are the students that need that next level of support, right? So we know that some students with autism, and also some students that have diagnoses like ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder, students that have learning and behavior disorders, frequently they lack organizational and planning skills. Those are a part of our executive functioning skills. And so they can't navigate through their school day successfully. And they don't understand those routines, or they understand the routines, but they don't remember enough of the pieces to let those routines be smoothly. And I'll tell you, one of my experiences was we moved schools frequently. When I was a younger child, my family moved a lot. And so every time I would go to a new school, I would have a lot of anxiety about, what is the lunchroom routine? How do they, I don't know why that gave me so much anxiety, but it took me a day or two to watch people and learn what they were doing. And here's the other piece. I had the skills to know to watch my peers and to watch the people around me and to see what they were doing. So if I didn't know what the routine was for turning in my homework, I could probably pick that up by observing other people. Students with autism will not do that successfully. Most of them won't. There'll be a few every now and then. You might get somebody who's really good at that, but imitating others is a core deficit for students with autism. That's why it's so important that we spend some time teaching those routines. And if I don't know how to do them, I'll probably make up my own way, and it might not be successful or what you want me to do at all. I really like this station here. It's nice. It's color coded, which I'm going to say I'm totally a nerd. You've probably heard me talk about that if you've been to more than one of these. I love things that are color coded. I do really like that. I think it makes so much sense for our students. Color coding just takes it to one more level of a visual support. So think outside of the box. Maybe your visual support is color coding. Maybe it's these lovely on that desk. Those are kind of magazine holders that they have turned into. It's a makeup workstation. So when apparently kids are absent on a regular basis, either it could be broken up by subject. Each subject has a different color, or maybe if it's an older classroom, it could be each period of the day has a different color. They know if they are absent, then this is where they go to find that work. That's pretty crucial if you're teaching a lot of students on an everyday basis, which most of us probably are. Other things to think about with routines is have a formal way to teach them at the start of the year, but also when kids come back after a break, even if it's just, a few days, 2 or 3 day weekend, we need to have some sort of system of reminding them of quickly, here are the routines, here are the everyday routines. And it's a safe assumption that if I haven't taught it, they do not know how to do it. So I need to make sure that I am explicitly teaching those routines. I worked with a school a few years ago that had a group of kindergartners. And one of the things that they did with those kindergartners, the teacher, if you work in early childhood or that young, early elementary age, kindergarten is kind of like herding cats. Sometimes kids are going in every direction. This may be their first school experience, especially since the start of COVID, to where preschool access was not always available, or families chose to keep children out, this year I think has been, I know several schools that have had a hard hit year for kids that have never experienced an organized educational setting, no preschool, no daycare, right? They've been home. So before COVID, I worked with a kindergarten classroom that she spent some time over the course of a few weeks, and got permission from parents to do something called video modeling. It was a regular ed kindergarten classroom. She just knew the value of how much time she was spending she had a large classroom, around 28 kids. And so that large classroom of 28, 5-year-olds was pretty tough on getting through those routines. And so she was losing educational opportunities every day because they weren't being successful. So she got permission from some parents of her students. She had a group of students who did a really good job of going through those everyday routines. So the lunch line, getting a pencil, lining up to go to the bathroom, going out to recess, arrival, dismissal, all of those everyday things that that we all need kids to do. And she videotaped that group. I'll call them her ringer kids. They were the group of kids that were really successful at it. So she just took a few minutes during her special time. She pulled those kids out for the first 10 or 15 minutes and would get them to show, here's how we line up. Here's how we walk down the hallway. Here's how we crisscross applesauce when we're sitting on the carpet. Here is what it looks like when we're in kindergarten, is at center time. Here's how we transition appropriately when the bell rings. She did that over the course of, it probably was about 6 or 8 weeks. She couldn't do it every day, right? So she would just take a few minutes when she had spare time, and she compiled several short video clips. And then she strung those together to make about a 6 to 10 minute little short video modeling of, here are all the things that you need to know about kindergarten. Here's how you line up. Here's how you sit on the carpet. All of those things that she needed the kids to do. And then they watched that video at the beginning of the school year. They watched that video kind of before the bell rang. As kids came in, a lot of times we watch cartoons, which there's nothing wrong with watching cartoons occasionally, right? But a lot of times that downtime of the classroom, to where they were just going to show something on the smart board, she would show those everyday classroom routines. And it made a giant difference. The kids really like to watch the other kids. And now those students that were on the video are first graders. So they had the proud, they were stars of the video. And it's something that she's still using, as far as I know, something that they're still able to use. So something to think about if you are, maybe you don't teach kindergarten, maybe you teach high school, or maybe you teach middle school. Maybe you teach in a pod and your routines are similar as 2 or 3 other teachers. Get together and think about, how are we teaching these routines? How can I emphasize it in my setting? How can you emphasize it in your setting? It will give you back a huge amount of time in your day. Especially for our students with autism and similar disabilities. They will not learn routines by watching others, and they probably will forget the routines over any course of long breaks. And you may be feeling that right now. So what are your biggest challenges to inclusion? I should probably be more specific. And then, or you can tell me, how do your everyday classroom routines and environments support the inclusion that you're trying to do? Okay, so challenges, time and communication. Yeah, those are big challenges to supporting inclusion. One of the hardest things that I see across maybe all of education, but I don't know about you, but I taught moderate and severe disabilities, and we never had a planning period, or it was very rare that I had a planning period. So how do you how do you collaborate with regular ed teachers if you don't ever have time to do that? So someone shared, for us, the new restrictions on internet security recommended by KDE, causing us to change all passwords in the district. Oh my goodness, that is terrible as an adult. I am also living with that we are having to change passwords on a much regular basis, and it is really tough to deal with. I can't imagine it. I had not thought about it from the perspective of supporting a lot of students as passwords change very frequently. Okay, having students in the same class from different grade levels and ability. Yeah, so many different children, so many different grade levels and so many different ability levels. And time is not our friend. Using individual student schedules in their primary mode of communication. Yeah, getting those schedules made and figuring out what works best for the student, and then having people that will follow up on them can be really tough. So classroom routines, I hope those are going really well for you. If not, I tell people to look at where, if your classroom routines aren't working for you, think about where the breakdown is and what you can do to support maybe the changes that you need. Yeah, it is. Someone else has chipped in and said it's very difficult having students in the same class from all different grade levels and ability levels. Unpredictable sensory stimuli. Yeah, that's tough, right? We don't know what sensory thing is going to pop up today, or maybe there's a new noise in the building, or just not feeling it. So something positive. This person does not teach in the FMD classroom, but they do know that our students are getting to go out to their related art classes a few times a week. So they're going to PE and art and music every week, and that has worked out really great for them. Thank you for sharing that. Classroom routines in the general ed. The rooms are changing the layout. So unpredictability of the classroom may not look the same when they come back every time. That can be tough. Providing equity with diverse backgrounds and behavior. Yeah, all of these, thank you for sharing them. So I wish I could say I had a magic wand or that I could fix them, but sometimes we just have to say, here are the challenges where we're at to figure out how to move forward. So we're going to talk about strategies that we can use to support students out there in that regular education classroom setting, but these will work across a broad range of settings. Is kind of going to be our next part of today's training. One of the things that we can do is let student know when there's going to be a change. I think that was something that someone just shared, that was something that was hard for their students when the regular education classroom, or any classroom, probably the the physical environment changes and significant changes. So how can we let our students know when there are changes? So in many cases, if the student is not told directly what will happen next, they can't predict. So one of the strategies are a prepare for change card. There's a couple of different ways that you can do this. You could use one of the examples that are on the screen. So it could be a visual image, change alert. Instead of morning meeting, we will have sensory time. Or maybe this is a student who has a higher skill set and they are great readers. And so maybe it's just written notice of here's what the change in routine is. Verbal cues, social stories. Sometimes it's not possible, right? Sometimes I can't tell you that there's going to be a fire alarm because I didn't know about it my own self. So in those circumstances, I usually do rely on something like a social story that we're reading on a regular basis. If I have a student that I'm supporting that has a really hard time dealing with changes, then I might read a social story with them on a regular basis, something along the lines of sometimes change happens, not change isn't always bad. Change just means that things are different, and it will be okay. If I do know that change is coming, then I really like these two examples that are on the screen that give us an option for telling kids, here are some of the things that, here's some ways that you can say, hey, guess what? Today, instead of going to PE, I had a student who loved physical education class, and he could not, as far as I could tell time on the clock. On any clock on his own, but he internally knew every day exactly when it was time to go to PE. And every year we would have picture day, and picture day would kick everyone out of the gym. And we were in a large school, about 700 students, and so it would take the full day to do picture day. So we did a change alert like the picture-based version. So instead of gym today, we are going to, and I gave him a choice. Choice is a really good, powerful antecedent-based intervention. So instead of gym today, we are going to go out to the playground, or we had an option of riding a bicycle. We had a large tricycle that we could take outside to a walking track. And he really did enjoy that a lot. So he could make a choice of, we can't go to gym today. Gym is not an option, but we can go to the playground and use that time on the playground, or we could take his bike that he very much enjoyed out to the track. So think about how you can support students in change. Another strategy is use visual supports. And visual supports are hard because someone has to develop the visual supports, and you have to teach the student how to use the visual support. So those are at least two of the things that do make visual supports hard. But the nice thing is that visual supports, once you've made them, I'm going to say make at least two, or make multiple copies of visual supports. I had a student that she loved visual supports, and she would take them home. I mean, I don't want to say she stole them, but she took them home on a regular basis. I never knew where the visual supports would be, but she would just cabbage them. So know that, make extra copies of your visual supports. For students with autism, visual supports are such a great strategy because it ties into and utilizes. Students with autism tend to be very visually oriented. And visual supports make the words stay, right? Everything that I say today is going to disappear. After this meeting is done, you're not going to have a direct copy of what I said, right? It's how come I made sure to provide you with access to this PowerPoint. And inside this PowerPoint is essentially a visual support for you all. Think about our lives. What visual supports do you use? Because we all use so many visual supports. I have multiple calendars. I stop at the stop signs. Hopefully I'm following the speed limit signs, right? We use visual supports all the time in our life. So when we're teaching these to students, we're giving them a lifelong skill that they can take out and use when they're an adult. So now kids with disabilities need a more specific visual support, right? Their visual supports maybe need to be more picture-based. Maybe they need to be more specific and explicitly taught. So we're going to look at some options for that. So these are daily schedules. I've worked with a lot of students, and here's what I tell people. How do I know if a student needs their own schedule? Well, if a student is not transitioning from one activity to the next very fluidly, it doesn't go easily for them, then probably they need a visual schedule. If a student has a hard time leaving one activity and going on to the next activity, then they probably need a visual schedule. Or if this is a student that has a lot of buildup anxiety about what's going to happen today, they probably need a visual schedule. Now, if they don't, and they're doing pretty well without it, and they're independent and their ability to go from one thing to the next, then maybe they do not need an individual daily schedule. Maybe you have a whole class schedule. Maybe they're able to follow the same schedule that all of their peers are following. And if that's the case, I think that's great and wonderful. But I know for many of our students with autism, that isn't always the case. So both of these are just written schedules. Obviously, the student is really pretty good at reading. I do like a written schedule, as in case of emergency, I can deploy the written schedule. I can write you down exactly what we're going to do right now. This could also be visual. These are all a lot of visual options that you can use. And I'm out and about in KVEC land, and I've seen some really good classroom schedules to be utilized. So I'm really happy to see that. I like the one in the middle. That's just a dry erase board. You can see the little icon pictures at the bottom. So as they get to, they use the middle part of that dry erase board to write out more specific directions. And for that student, that worked fabulous. It told the student what they should be doing. They also partnered with, that student had a one-to-one aide, and it reminded that one-to-one aide person, it told them, hey, here's exactly what they should be doing. So it worked really well for everyone. Pictures could be real photographs. They could be like this, like the image on the right side of the screen, which is more like Boardmaker or Mayor Johnson. It's more about finding what type of picture works best for your student. And now there are 1,001 visual supports out there. We don't have time to go over all of them. I'll probably incorporate a couple of options each time, just because visual supports they're one of the most researched, most evidence-based practices that you can put into place for kids with autism. And they are considered an antecedent-based intervention, which means I can put these into place before any problem behaviors occur in order to prevent them from happening. Okay, simplify language. We know that students with autism can have significant difficulties with social and communication skills. And sometimes we forget, especially when we run into our students with autism that have really good verbal skills. They can say so many things that it's easy to forget that social communication piece, or that pragmatics part of communication, they may not be making the connections that we are assuming that they're making. So social communication means effective use and understanding of communication in social context. So thinking about, how do we simplify our language? How do we make sure that our students are understanding what we say? One of the things that we can do is watch for literalness. I can't say that today. Avoid metaphors, idioms, and sarcasm, because these are sometimes read as noncompliance when the student truly doesn't understand. I had worked with a middle schooler a few years ago, and the teacher contacted me for some pretty significant defiant behavior, and the teacher was very sarcastic. I think it was just their natural personality. They just tended to use a lot of sarcasm, and the student responded to that sarcasm by doing exactly what they said. And it looked like the student was being really defiant. And it kind of just turned out that the student was taking them for their word and following through with what they said. So avoid those things. And then it's the literal, it's the statement of, it's raining cats and dogs. So these students may be looking for the cats and dogs. And we live in Appalachia, right? And we tend to fall a lot on metaphors and idioms. Those types of language skills are heavy in our culture, which is not a wrong thing at all, but it just means we have to be aware that our students with autism may not pick up on that, and they may take what we say literally. With my own personal child, when he was young, probably kindergarten, first grade. He was telling, well, probably first grade, I'm going to say. It was the age of the knock knock jokes, and he went through the spell of wanting to tell different, we checked out from the library different joke books, and he loved to tell jokes. And so I told him one day, I said, "Oh buddy, you are killing me." And what did I mean? Well, I meant, that's so funny that it's so funny that it's killing me. I did not mean you're literally killing me, but he took it as I am literally killing you. He ran up to me and he goes, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." And it took me a few seconds to make the connection of, oh, wait, he doesn't understand. This is a metaphor. This is non-literal language here. I meant this was really funny. But he took it as he's literally killing me. So other just good practices that you can try out is use student's name prior to giving a direction or asking a question. Make sure that you have their attention. Maybe it's gently tapping on their desk. That's been one of my best, one of my easiest strategies. It's quiet. I don't need to interrupt everybody, but I can gently, tap that desk and make sure that I have their attention. Provide students questions in advance. I had worked with a probably upper elementary at the time student who was out in the regular education classroom all day, and you could not tell that she had an autism diagnosis. Most of the day she did fabulous, except for when she got to math. She had a lot of anxiety about math. She was a little bit behind in math, so math was harder for her, and it just created a bunch of anxiety. So one of the things that we did, a part of her specially designed instruction, was every day before, at the beginning of the school day, her mom dropped her off at 7:15. I would meet her in the library at 7:15, and we did about 15 to 20 minutes of that day's math class on one-on-one with her, or sometimes there was one or two other students, but very small group, maybe one-on-one. And we talked about what was going to be the topic that day. So to take off that edge of anxiety. So combine your verbal instructions, so my spoken words, with pictures, gestures, a demonstration, maybe written instructions for our students. Because if I just say things, words disappear, right? Words are going to be gone. If I'm lucky, you all will remember about 80% of what I've said in the last hour. That's if your brains are on fire, you've had your required 6 to 8 hours of sleep, you've had your 2 cups of coffee, and you're not so exhausted at this point that you can no longer function. Then if I'm lucky, you're going to remember about 80% of what I say. Same thing goes for kids. If they're having a bad day, if you're having a bad day, then maybe you're going to remember 50% of what I say. Same things happen with our students. They don't hear or remember what we just said a lot of the time. So we have to fall back to pictures, gestures, demonstrations, and written instructions. And that's probably for most of your students, not just your students with disabilities. Have students demonstrate understanding by paraphrasing back what you said. This is a really good trick. Ask them to tell you, or to tell you the meaning of what you just said. And don't rely on those yes or no questions to indicate comprehension. It's a really easy way for students to mask the fact that they don't know what you want them to do. So be specific when providing instruction. And I won't read you all of this, but instead of saying clean up the science lab, say put the microscope on the shelf. When I taught my second or third year of teaching, I taught a moderate and severe disabilities classroom that was multi-age kids up through about 6th grade. And one day early in the school year, we had been doing a hands-on math lesson. So we had a lot of different small manipulatives out on the table. And so we were done and we were getting ready to move on to the next thing. And so I told my students, I said, all right, guys, pick up the table. I said, pick up the table. So when I looked back, my kids were literally lifting the table off of the floor. And I thought at the time, I thought, oh my gosh, what are they doing? And I look back at their little innocent faces and they're just looking at me and they're like, we picked up the table, Miss Kim. And I'm like, oh, I need to be more specific when providing that instruction, because I meant put the counting bears back on, back into their basket, put the, the linking cubes, put them back into their box. That's what I should have said versus pick up the table. Because if I had not been aware of the fact that it was my fault that they were holding the table up in the sky, I could have took that as defiant behavior. So think about that when you're providing instruction. Teach the hidden curriculum rules. Those are so important. And what is the hidden curriculum? So students with autism tend to be literal. I've talked about that a lot. And so think about all of the unwritten rules of social interactions and all of the unwritten rules of communication interactions. So students with autism tend to be literal. And so they don't read or know about the unwritten rules that really guide and dictate social behavior in different contexts, right? So these are considered hidden curriculum. That's where that word comes from. And if you want to know more about this, that reference at the bottom is a really good place to start. You can just type in hidden curriculum and put autism with it maybe, and there'll be a lot of different information come up about it. It's a very interesting place to start. So think for a minute. Here are some hidden curriculum examples. And this is directly from one of the books. So what's the hidden curriculum? And I'm not going to read these to you, but I will tell you what's the hidden curriculum of using the urinal. So I'm a woman. I've never peed in the urinal. So what's the hidden curriculum? So many years ago, I was teaching young boys how to potty train, essentially, right? And so at the time, we had reached the point that they were able to graduate using just the MSD bathroom. And now they needed to be able to use the bathroom with their peers. And I realized that I had no idea what the rules were for using the urinal. So I took a survey of some of the men that I know. So here are some of the hidden rules of using the urinal. So some of the things that I have been told about appropriate use of the urinal. So first off, you do not drop your pants to the floor, right? If you're standing at the urinal where other people can see, you're just opening your fly, right? Or opening just barely your pants. You do not necessarily talk to the person next to you or look towards them unless it's your really good friend, right? Hidden curriculum. I don't know these things, right? And these rules could go on. There are more things that necessarily may or may not toss you off. So what are the hidden curriculum in your classroom? So for a second, think about this. Let's start here. What are the hidden curriculums of a faculty meeting? What are the hidden rules in a faculty meeting? Think about that for a few seconds. So hidden curriculum for a faculty meeting. Even if I didn't want to be there, I would keep that to myself, right? I'm going to smile. I'm going to smile and I'm going to look really happy to be there, right? Hidden curriculum, right? It's the rules that we assume other people automatically know. They're the social rules that we all go by, but they're not written down anywhere. And we don't necessarily teach them to others. For students, yeah, so Caitlin shared not speaking when someone else is speaking. That is a hidden rule. You should not talk over each other. Other things to think about. What are the classroom rules, right? In your setting. Hold on. First, there we go. Okay, so what are the hidden curriculum rules at school? Take a second, put them in the chat. I do want to share some out. What are the hidden curriculum rules at your school? And there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just the rules that we automatically expect kids to know, especially around social skills or the social piece of interaction. Think about how much of our communication is spent on reading other people's body language or reading facial expressions. So what are the hidden curriculum rules at your school? And this could be student-based or it could be adult-based. Here's a good one. that was at my previous school. There was a hidden curriculum rule. You did not bring fish to work and warm it up in the staff microwave. I did not know this rule. I did not bring fish, you'll be happy to know. But one day someone brought fish and they warmed it up in the staff microwave, and you could smell the fish down the hallway, and the whole school, like, they just, I mean, they wanted to burn this person at the stake because they were like, they know you just don't bring fish to school. This is understood. And apparently it wasn't, right? But it was expected hidden curriculum for the adults at school. You did not bring your fish from home and warm it up in the microwave because no one wanted to smell that smell. So don't say the kids are sure being quiet today. Absolutely. Never say that. That is the curse and the end of all quiet. Or don't say they've been so good today. Things are going so well. It's doomed at that point, right? That's a hidden curriculum rule. And there are so many different ones, right? If you think if this is a new topic for you, or if you've never heard of the hidden curriculum rules, look those up. They are worth knowing about. Okay, I am done as far as this PowerPoint, and this is my email in case you have questions.
Kim,
Yes.
okay, question. Can a object serve double duty?
So an object in this object schedule.
Yeah.
So is it a similar thing that it's serving? A similar purpose, I guess?
Well, I did, like, for the home time, I was trying the red car,
Okay.
and we ended up taking their lunch boxes out of the room to, like, the PE teacher's room till the end of the day because they associate the lunch boxes with home time.
Gotcha.
And so it's like they have their lunch boxes at lunch, and then I've ended up these first 2, 3, 4 days back taking those lunch boxes, the empty lunch boxes, with me to my lunch. That way I can drop them off and they're not in the room because they're associating, if they see those lunch boxes, it's time to go home after lunch.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think in that context, it sounds just fine to me, right? Because they're empty that second time.
Yeah, and then they have to, like, fill them back up when we bring them back in for them to go home.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Caitlin. I think that makes so much sense.
Thanks, Ms. Kim, for sharing the information with us, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We're going to have a safe rest of the evening and a safe week, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.